what does it mean that the world was created for me? So he explains it. He says, like, I'm looking at this puzzle. If you think of a puzzle, would you frame a puzzle that's missing a piece? Well, not unless you're really arty, right? But you're not going to frame a puzzle that's missing a piece. So he says, you have to realize that what it means that the world was created for me, he says that you're a once-off opportunity. There was never anyone like you from the creation of Adam, and there never will be anyone like you until Mashiach comes. You, with your particular blends of talents, born to particular parents at a particular place and at a specific time, were created with only a mission that you can do. And you cannot swap your task with anyone else in this world. And he ends off like this, and he says that all of the forefathers and all of the people in history are waiting for you to do your task, because their lives are not complete without you fulfilling your mission.
Survival where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin.
Welcome to Hakol Sababa. Tonight is my friend Rabbi Alon Joseph, all the way from South Africa, came specially for this interview over here, and we're very happy to have him in the studio. The studio, I'm being a little generous over here, but and the story about you coming here might be slightly exaggerated, but we'll live with it.
I'm not so convinced. I've seen the people you've had on your podcast. I feel when you said let's do a podcast, I'm like, I've seen the people you've had, and I'm thinking, why would he want me? But anyway, I'm happy to be on the podcast. I'm not complaining.
Well, I'm going to squeeze you for all you're worth. That's
there's a lot.
You may have realized that Alon and I have been friends for quite a long time. We were in yeshiva together, and are part of an elite secret society known as the Breakfast Table, which is also been another fellow member is Rabbi Bukatz, who I interviewed in podcast number 4, which you really, really should listen to, because that is an excellent podcast.
Yeah.
And
it's brilliant.
Yeah. Anyways, let's start with you. Tell us about yourself. Give me some backstory from your misspent childhood.
Oh yeah, all that therapy coming out. So I grew up in a traditional Jewish home. wasn't from. We were traditional. Went to shul on Friday nights. Kept a kosher home, but otherwise wasn't anything like that. At the age of 10, my family decided to go live in America for a number of years. So we were there for
Whereabouts?
2.5 years in California, in Anaheim. And we would go through on Shabbos to Irvine, to the Chabad shul that was there. And that was pretty much my only exposure to Yiddishkeit. And we came back. It was about 12 and a half, so I had 6 months to prepare for my Bami. And because of the school system and the grades, and because they started different times of years, so I went down in a grade. I didn't have Afrikaans, which was compulsory in those days. And I formed a group of friends. And
of more or less your maturity level.
Yes. Right. No, I fit it in really well. It was great.
Yeah.
And it was there was one of the boys in the class I became friend with, and he invited me over to his house for Shabbos. So I was like, okay, I'm keen on that.
What school were you at?
At Yeshiva College.
Why did your parents choose Yeshiva College?
So,
I mean, it wouldn't have been more natural to go to King David.
It probably would have been. So our cousins who still lived in South Africa, all their kids were at Yeshiva College. So they were our cousins. So they said, they're there. It just makes more sense. And that's where we landed up.
Support systems.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were at Yeshiva College. Well, my brothers were. I was born in Israel. So my parents, to go back even further than that, my parents made Aliyah, and I was born in Israel. And then when they went back to South Africa, we were in Yeshiva College already then, from nursery school. And then we went to America. It was just natural when we came back just to go back into Yeshiva College.
So your family's emigrated like 4 times.
Yes, I have been around the world, which has stood me in good stead throughout my life, of many experiences and coming into contact with different people and different cultures and seeing things from very different perspectives. I often look back at it, and it was challenging at the time, but I look back at it and say, wow, I actually learned so much from those experiences. And it was amazing when I actually look back at it.
Yeah.
So this boy invited me over for Shabbos. I was like, okay. It was the first, and I found it absolutely fascinating. I thought like, wow, there's like something to this. So I started spending more time, and I all my other friends that I'd made were all keeping Shabbos. So that's really where my religious journey started. And then it grew, and it had different challenges, and that's where I was till the end of school. And then I was meant to come and study in Israel, and Hashem had other plans. My brother was getting married in April that year, and I was debating, should I go to Israel and then come back for the wedding? Tickets were very, very expensive. And someone said to me, why don't you just learn in yeshiva in Johannesburg till April, and you'll go after Pesach. That's like a natural thing. So I went to Yeshiva Gedola.
That was where I met you.
That's where we met.
So you had just started when I started.
Yeah.
But I'd already done my degree by then.
Yes. And I had just finished school.
Right.
And I started, and it was the first month, and it went really, really well. So I went to Rabbi Goldfein's Hatzolah, and I said, I have a dilemma. Should I go to Israel after Pesach, or should I stay and learn? Like, what do I do?
Okay, kind of nogea b'davar, but yeah.
Yeah, but he was always like, he always gave you the advice that you needed for you,
Yeah. No, that's true. Hey there, this is Charles Bear. I'm your host on Hakol Sababa. I hope you're enjoying our content. And if you'd like to see more content like this and better content, maybe you can do me a favor. If you're on YouTube, please can you just go and click that subscribe button? And if you're on Spotify, click the follow button under my podcast. The more people that I've got following and subscribing to my channel, the more the algorithm wants to promote my content and show it to more people, and success breeds success. It snowballs. Also, when we're looking for guests to come onto the show, it's a lot more of an incentive for them to come on the show if we got, for example, 100,000 subscribers or something modest like that. So if you can just do me a solid, it'll take you a second and it'll cost you nothing. Just go and click subscribe, follow, whatever it is, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
There were some boys, I remember he said to them, it's better for you to go to Israel. So he said to me, are you enjoying the learning? I said, it's great. He said, are you growing? I said, yeah. So he said, if you go there, what's your plan? Is your plan to spend years and years or just the year? So I said, look, I don't know. At the moment, it's just for the year. So he said, well, if you go, it's going to take you at least another 3-4 months to settle down. By the time you get into the learning, because it's a different culture, it's a different lifestyle, you may be going to get 2 or 3 months of learning in. Here, your learning is good. If you focused on your learning, then this is the place that you should be. Yeah. So I didn't end up going to Israel, and I spent the next 4.5 years in Yeshiva Gedola.
Well, that was our gain.
Yeah. So it was. We'll share. But I always look back and think how the events happen in your life.
Yeah.
And while they're happening, you think, why is it like this and why is it like that? But then eventually
20 years will always tell the story.
Exactly.
Sometimes less.
That hindsight is 20/20 vision.
Yeah.
And it was very much like that. And then, as time developed, so then after that, I got married, and then I started looking for different things to do. So I got involved in teaching, and then I fell in love with chinuch. And then I got a job, I got offered a position in a kiruv organization in Arachim, and it just fulfilled both of my needs, and I was like, wow. And then after...
You hadn't got smicha yet, though?
No, so I hadn't got smicha yet. What I did is that when I joined Arachim, they have a very interesting policy, and that is that if you're going to be in kiruv, you have to learn at least one seder a day. That was their policy. So you can either choose morning or afternoon, but you have to spend half day learning. And they're very big on that. You can't be in kiruv and teaching other people if you're not growing yourself. So while I was there, I started my smicha process. That they were really learning nida at that stage. And then I decided, this would be a good thing. And I was still teaching as well. So I thought, if this is going to be my life's work, then this would be something that I should pursue more. So then I started learning with some guys in the kollel, another breakfast table person, Anton, Rabbi Anton Klein. So we started learning a bit together. And then I developed and then I got my smicha, and I still continued on that journey. But I always had a passion of human psychology and human nature. Even in my libet, it was always drew me. The hashkafa, like the Torah Musar always just spoke to me to understand human nature. It was just something that was just, it was fascinating.
I share that passion with you, actually.
Yes.
I'm also very interested to understand how our brains work and all the different mechanisms that we have of, dealing with facts as they come in. And like dealing with your own cognitive biases is probably one of the biggest challenges we've got. Because like, how do you know that what you're seeing is actually that you think is confirming your views, that that's not just confirmation bias, and ignoring other evidence to the contrary. So it's always a
So that's why I loved learning Musar. It just spoke to me through my own journey and own self-development. It really helped me to develop my own self-worth and self-esteem and look at myself, because I'd moved around so much in different environments I'd been to. I was always like the outcast in many of the schools I was in, so it was interesting.
Why outcast?
Because I was always the foreigner coming in, so it was...
Why foreigner?
So when we went to America, I was like the new kid in the school.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So people were like, who's this new kid? Coming back to Yeshiva College, I didn't have any of my old friends that I had before. It was like coming into a new environment, making all new friends. So it was difficult, and I had to go through my own journey to develop myself. So when I discovered Musar and that self-development and that self-analysis, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And that Torah psychology about how we approach ourselves and how we look at ourselves, and as you said, removing that bias from ourselves, and actually seeing ourselves for who we are and accepting that and saying, wow, this is the way Hashem created me, and that's okay. These are my skills, and if I'm going to compare myself to someone else, it's not going to work. That was an incredible journey for me.
And I'm also going to inject something over here that we're not. It's not just about accepting yourself. It's about coming to terms with yourself, but you never accept that you are who you are, because we're always centered on growth and improving ourselves.
Right, and that's the beautiful part of it.
Yeah,
is that I remember always going to like high school camps or camps after school, and people used to write in your book afterwards.
Yeah.
And the one comment is like, stay this, I love who you are, stay the same person who you are, stay the way you are. And I was thinking like, that's why would you want me to stay who I am?
That's terrible advice.
Exactly. And it's like, just stay the beautiful person you are. And I think, well, I can't be more beautiful. And people would write their teacher, I'm thinking like, that's a terrible comment to tell someone. You're saying like, you're limited and this is how far you're going to go, and you can't do anything more than that.
You've arrived.
Yeah. And I was just like, that's a terrible comment. It's like, develop yourself, become better, but stay the way you are.
Alei v'hatzlach. That's what they write in my children's report cards. Always alei v'hatzlach, ali v'hatzlichi.
Yes.
It's always go up and succeed.
Which is what we want,
right.
So I started looking into Torah psychology, and then I started looking into human psychology, and I started studying psychology through UNISA, and started looking more into self-development and self-growth and running different programs. And basically I did a whole lot of coaching courses and a whole lot of other different courses on human development and how the human body works and how the human mind works and the link between the two. And it was fascinating, and it led me on. Because I was working so much in Kiruv and with people, I was with people the whole day, and essentially I was coaching them. So then I had some people who said to me, can you coach me? So I was like, okay, never done that before, but if an opportunity comes about.
They're asking you to coach them in what?
So in personal development, so a lot of them were running very successful businesses, or they were struggling with different things, and they said, we see that you understand human nature. Can you help me overcome certain challenges in the business field, in my personal field? I want to be more successful. So it developed from trying to makarev them to becoming their personal mentor and the executive coach to help them on their personal level. So I was like, okay, well, I see a new opportunity that Hashem's directing me on. Yeah. Let's follow that. So I started to do some coaching courses and to become certified as a business coach and a life coach. And it was fascinating working with people. And I was still using that in Kiruv. And there was an Arachim seminar where some people came on, and I would learn with them after the seminar. And I met this one couple, and I learned with them for a long time. And I would learn with them as a couple, and then I would learn with the husband one-on-one in his business. And that also developed into coaching, but he was one of the most phenomenal human beings I'd ever met. And he said to me one day, he said, you know, we had become like best friends over time. And he said, you know, I love what you're doing. And we've been working together, like you've been helping me, but let's do something together. So I was like, okay, what are you thinking? So he says, you know, my staff at the moment, there was a recession going on in the world. And he said, I'm struggling with my staff. He said, I'm finding their morale low. I'm finding that they're struggling with things. We need to just try and see how we can uplift them and how we can boost them up. So I was like, okay. You know, he said, I want to work with you and let's see what we can do together. And that started the real journey of my life. And that was about 15, 16 years ago where we developed this business. And that became a business that started to help companies to develop culture around human values and looking at people in business saying, you're an individual, let's help you as the individual. If we can help you, then you succeed and then the business succeeds. And that became a whole journey in and of itself. But my whole journey, it's always been so interesting how my path has always been in that direction of always about helping people.
Yeah.
That was like the common thread. Every time Hashem has like pivoted things, it was always in that same area of saying like, these are the skills that you have. This is what I gave you. Use them to help other people. And it was something that took me a while to acknowledge. And I tried other different fields as well. And just none of them worked. None of them ever ignited me or made me feel passionate about something in the same way that I felt about helping people.
Sure. Now, I mean, when you're trying to pitch courses like this to businesses that are like values-based and whatever, it strikes me that you kind of have a sort of a selection problem. Is that you have businesses that are run by psychopaths, you know, and they're not going to be interested in your stuff, and they're the ones who need it, as opposed to like the businesses that are run by like nice people who treat people with respect and whatever. And I think, yeah, why do they even need your training? So like where's your pitch at? Who hires you and why?
Yeah, I'm still trying to work that out. I'll tell you what I have worked out. The psychopaths don't work. That we know. Narcissists, egotistical people, you're right. You can't tell them. They don't see. They see. So how the journey started in the business, and this will answer it really well, is we looked at what motivated staff in businesses.
Yeah.
And we noticed that every business had a value charter. So we said, great, a value charter is the way to go. So we spent 3 years analyzing different businesses' value charters. And we noticed two distinct types of value charters. One, that were all business values. And two, that were human values. And what was so interesting is that those businesses that had business values had high staff turnover, had very low staff engagement, and were run purely just on making profits. And the people were a product to help them to do that.
Right, and to clarify that, how you make that split is when you say, I'm just imagining, and tell me if I'm wrong, that it's the kind of business that says our mission is to delight our customers with outstanding technology and products and service and and it's all about the business growth. Whereas somebody that's more, how do you put it, more staff values centered. I mean, what does a value centered mission statement look like?
So I'll explain it this way. It's very interesting. Some companies, when you look at their mission statement, were all about profits. They were our job is to make
deliver value for shareholders.
Exactly, and that's exactly it. And if you look at their mission statement, those are the words that they use. It's about profit driven. So the shareholders benefit, whoever those shareholders might be, but it's all about the shareholders benefiting from your work. And they're very open about it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of a funny story when I just made Aliyah, and I was interviewing for my first job, and there was one place that first wanted everyone to do a little entrance exam before they went through. So I went to do this technical test without meeting anyone first, and obviously I aced the test, and they said, no, they want to meet with you. So I met with the director of this business. I had no idea what this business was. I was just like, I'm a newbie in Israel, and I'm just, trying to find my first job in programming. And so I arrive at this, meet at Cafe Hillel in Jerusalem, and the guy he's actually the CEO of the business. He comes to meet me. I thought, that's great, very chashuv. And he says, now we're an outsourcing business, and we specialize in providing top talent to our customers at the best possible prices. Thinking, that's not something you want to be telling your employee, your potential employee.
So you're going to work really hard to make someone else rich.
and the rest of the stuff that he told me was basically the potential terms of my employment, and it sounded like I was basically selling myself into slavery. And I said, I'm doing better just doing part-time stuff from home for a guy in overseas, and thank you. We're done here.
So I'll share this story with you. Listen to this, and this gives you a real indication. One of the guys I used to learn with came to me and he said, I need your advice on something. I said, he says, I've been offered a job. I said, great. He said, there's one clause in the contract that I'm really worried about. I said, what's that? He says, in the contract it says company before family. So
red lights.
I was
red lights. Wow.
Okay, what does that mean? And is this a standard clause? So he said, I said, can you go ask other people in the company? So he phoned me back the next day. He said, I'm not taking the job. I said, what did they tell you? So they all said, no, it's a standard clause in the company. The company's first, family second. And they all told him that you got to understand this is the way the company works. So he said, does everyone have this? So he said, yeah. And they said, this is the way that it works. And he was talking to them, and then they said to him like this, that if they had a choice, they never would have done it. So he said, you mean sign the contract? They said, no, have families.
Oh, my word.
And he was like, that was the culture of the company, and that's what they'd created, that it was company before family, and everything was like that. And if you're
I'm guessing that this company doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Yeah, that's not a long-term...
But how's that happen? That's what it means that a company is business-based and not human-based. Where you have a clause like that, and everyone has to abide by that. Yeah. And they said that's what it is. If you got no matter what's happening in your family, if there's something in the business, this is your priority. And if you're not willing to do this, then this isn't the place for you. Okay.
Well, wow.
So he decided it wasn't the place for him.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah. Okay. So carry on with your.
So we found these two different value charters, and then we discovered that there's some really amazing companies that were based on human values. So we started saying, great, let's look at which human values produce higher staff engagement and higher staff happiness. So we found a list of 14 values. It's so interesting. They all come down, no matter what it is, they all boil down to 14 basic values. And then it's about understanding which values motivate people. So we spent the next 2 years.
What sort of values? Just give me.
So I'm going to give you an example. So we spent the next 2 years trying to work out which values do people respond to. So we used this company really as a guinea pig. And he said, let's do this because they need, we need to do something for them. So, for example, what we started doing is we started looking and saying, what's the basic value that we want? What's the behavior that we would like people to have? So, for example, we spoke about honesty. We said, is honesty a good value? We said, yes, honesty is a very, very important value. So, great. We identified values, and then we spoke about what are the behaviors that we think that behavior or that value represents. And we spent a long time trying to work out what are the behaviors and what are the values. And then what we would do is we would run sessions on this value and say, right, we're launching our value charter. This month's value is honesty. And I would come in and I would run a very short, a 20-minute powerful presentation on the value of honesty. And what we discovered over a couple of months, there were two values that stood out for us that we had never seen on any other value charter. but produced the most incredible results that just floored us. And when we looked at creating the company, when we finally got to it, we used these two values as the basis for everything. And the one value, it's so interesting, we never ask people, and I found companies that are really human-based values, and yet there's one value that they never speak about. And I asked them, I say, what do you think is your most important value? And they give me all their values, honesty, integrity, loyalty. I go, great. And I said to them, but you're missing one, and they can't work it out. And eventually I said to them, what do you think is the most important value that a person needs? And I say to them,
I'm going to go respect.
So we go with all these things, and we say, well, why? And then we break it down, and then they say, well, what's your most important value? So I said to them, you know what the foundation of everything is the value of you. Because how you value yourself, if a person has low self-esteem and they don't value themselves, then you're never going to produce anything from that. So the value of you actually became, when we started working with the value of you, and we started saying to people that you're the most important value, you're the most important person in your life, you can only give to others what you have within yourself. And if you're not developing and growing within yourself, then how are you ever going to succeed? And in so many people's minds, it was amazing when we worked with people, how that value of the essence of the person, of saying to them, what makes you so special? What makes you amazing? Why do you think you're an amazing person, an incredible person? And that resonated so much with people. They were like, wow, you actually value me as me. You're not only looking at me as a vehicle to earn you money, but you're actually interested in me as a person. And that created such a massive shift in businesses for people.
And how do they do it? Do they like have sort of off-site meetings, or in like just a sort of, I don't know, some sort of on-site activity day where everyone goes around in a circle and says who expresses their own personality?
So this was the most amazing part of it. Is we never did any of that. What I would do is that I would come in twice a month for 15 to 20 minutes, and I would I would show little videos, and then I would talk about the value of you and why valuing yourself is so important. And and we did this for about 3 or 4 months, just on one
15
value.
to 20 minutes twice a month.
That was it. So every second week, it was, and we were just playing around with stuff. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. We had no idea what we were doing. It was like, this worked, okay, let's try it again. This didn't work, okay, let's try that again. But
how are you measuring your results?
So I'm going to get to that. So we found that the value of you had a massive impact just by that. But the second value, which linked with that, and that's why you'll see the two worked so together, was gratitude. And it was that was actually one of the most amazing breakthroughs we had. We were away on a Shabbaton. There was, I can't remember who the rabbi who was presenting that weekend, but one of the sessions he spoke about was gratitude, was having hakaras hatov for things around you. So he said to us, he said, I want you to go home after this weekend, and I want you to play the gratitude game with your family. And he said, what the gratitude game is I want you just to sit around your table, Friday night table, Shabbos table, and just share gratitude, what you're grateful for in this week, and grateful for each other. So we're thinking, okay, sounds good. So the next Shabbos, he's sitting at his table. He had 3 teenage kids at that stage, and he says to them, guys, I want to play the gratitude game. So his 2 teenagers look at him and go, Dad.
That's lame.
Yeah, exactly. So he said, look, we can just play it once. I'm going to start. You don't have to go if you don't want to, but I just want to try it. So he started with his wife, and he said, I want to just say thank you for everything you do. You schlep the kids, you do so much for me, and I just want to say I'm so appreciative. And then he spoke about his older son, and he said,
so he was going in order for each person.
Yeah. And he went around to his son, and he said, when I come home from work and you run up to me and you give me a hug and you say, Dad, can we play football for a couple of minutes? He says, that's so meaningful that we can have that bond.
Yeah.
And then his second daughter, she struggled a lot with learning and academics, and she had a really hard time. And he said to her, I just want to tell you that I appreciate your resilience and the effort that you put into things, and I can see how hard it is for you, but I just want to say we notice it, and you're doing such a great job. And his youngest daughter...
That's not a gratitude thing. That's just expressing a praise.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, he just said, I really appreciate the effort you put into things. He tied it in with it. And his youngest daughter, he said the same thing to him. He said, okay, does anyone else want to go? So his wife went afterwards. And then the kids were like, okay. So his oldest son, you know, spoke to the dad and spoke to the mom. And then he spoke to his sister. And he said, you know, he said the same thing. He said, you know, I just want you to know that I don't always say it to you, but you really are an amazing person. And I know that you give your best in everything that you do. And I just want you to know that I love you. And she burst out crying. And I like looked at her and said like, okay, now what did he do? You know? Mm-hmm. And she turned around to him and she said, you know, you've never told me that. And I didn't know that. And I didn't really know that you love me like that. And he left it. And he said the next Shabbos they're sitting at the table and the kids turned to him and said, Dad, can we play that gratitude game again? So he was like,
okay,
that's okay. So he phoned me on Motzei Shabbos and he said, you know what? I'm going to try this on Monday morning in my work. Now, he works in a hardware industry, right? And the hardware industry is not exactly known for its like fluffy, warm, fluffy environment. You know, these are like, these are guys that deal power tools, you know, rough people. So I said, okay, you know, let's see how it goes. So Monday morning, he calls they have a Monday morning staff meeting with everyone anyway. He calls, so they're sitting there and he says, guys, I want to try something with you.
How many people are sitting there?
35 people.
Okay.
He says, I want to play a gratitude game with you. And they look at him and he says, I know your reaction because I had this with my family. He says, I want to do it once. If you like it, that's fine. And if you don't like it, we'll end it. He said, but this is the way that goes. And he went around to each person and he said like to himself, he says, I know, and each person, he said, I know you come in early. I just want you to know, I really appreciate it and I acknowledge it and I see it. Anyway, and he went to his tea lady. He said, you know, every morning I arrive at work early. And as soon as you arrive, you bring me my cup of tea just the way I like it. I just want to say thank you so much. And he went around to each person. And he said, does anyone want to share?
35 of them.
Yeah, it was quick. But he said, does anyone else want to share? And some people shared with each other. And that was it. He left it. Mm-hmm. He said later on in the day, sitting in his office, and he gets this knock and he looks up and there are these two people standing there. He says, sir, he says, we were talking about that game you played with us this morning. And the guy says, can we do it again tomorrow? He was like, okay, if you want. And the next morning they did the same thing. And what he discovered was amazing. Somebody would say, you know, yesterday you helped me with this job. I just want to say thank you so much for helping me. And some people gave gratitude about their personal life, but a lot of people actually shared gratitude about their work environment and just acknowledging what other people were doing. So we met and we thought like maybe this is a strategy. And we started to develop gratitude sessions for them. And we said, give us one thing you're grateful for at home and one thing you're grateful for at work. And it would take them about 10 minutes to go through everyone. And the results were just so what we built into it is that once a quarter, every about 8 weeks, I would sit with the staff members and go, we've been doing this. Tell me what's working and what's not working. You know, we're trying to develop things. So what's working for you guys and what's not working? And they told us two things. They said the value of you had changed their lives, but they now started to realize that they actually count. They've got skills. They look at themselves differently. They look at their job differently. But they said the value of gratitude changed their lives because they took it home. And we're like, what do you mean you took it home? We were doing this for the business. Mm-hmm. So they said, no, we started doing a gratitude session with our families at home. And the one person said, I now have a little board where everyone has to write down one thing they're grateful for every day. Mm-hmm. And they said, you've changed our lives. And we were like, huh? And we didn't like, this was totally unexpected. We didn't even think of that. And then we realized something that we hadn't realized before. And that is when you have human values and you speak about the value of you, that wherever you go, it's the same values. So this wasn't work-related values. This was actually impacting who they were as individuals. And when they left work, they felt inspired and motivated to still continue striving in their own personal lives. That's what the value of you did.
In the slightest, I must say. That's, I mean, you know, I'll just share with you from my perspective, the gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. It's nice that it rhymes. Yeah, the attitude of gratitude is completely life-changing. like, I don't know if you noticed, I've got this little bracelet over here that says think positive, talk positive, be positive, which actually is from my friend, the late David Geffen, whose second yacht site was a few days ago. He was he called himself a love engineer, and he did a lot of good work in South Africa as well. You met him, right? Yeah, and he, but also the whole thing. There was a challenge that actually. He didn't actually give that to me. My friend Eddie Shine gave me this challenge, but I used this bracelet to help me cement it. Is just having a completely positive interactions with the world, and basically the challenge was never to say a negative word, or even like roll your eyes, or certainly raising your voice to somebody would count as a whoops, you failed, and then you got to switch your bracelet to the other hand and start the count again.
Wow.
So the challenge was to see how long you could go. And like when I started, it was like 2 minutes.
Oh, there we go again.
Here we go again. It's like switch, and but as you like start messed it up, then you start getting used to that kind of thing, and it got into days, and when you got into days and you messed it up, why did I do that? And it's like, so you switch around and start again, and eventually I got to the point where I was going like weeks without changing my bracelet over. Yeah. And like I was thinking of ways of reframing negative experiences positively. So while this was happening, and I was in India on a business trip, and I got Delhi belly. And oh my word, that was
oh, that's horrible. That's not
really horrible. And I actually had to be taken to a hospital in India where they gave me some antibiotics and
lots of
it was Erev Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, and they said, "Would you like me to admit you?" And I said, "No, please. I'll go to Shabbat. Thank you." There's no way I'm spending Shabbos in a hospital in India. Anyway, so I was into like social media posts at the time, and I took a photo of myself in the hospital. The hospital had this most ridiculous centerpiece in the middle of the foyer. Was this gigantic statue of a baby. I don't know. It was pretty weird, but I got somebody to take my photo next to this baby. I was about as tall as its thigh. Okay, like the width of its thigh, I'm saying. Right, and it was sitting on the ground, so I was like, that high, and my post caption said, I have just enhanced my already amazing immune system with antibodies to Delhi belly. Go me! Reframe into something positive. But like, I know what Rav Haber says is also like a life-changing exercise, and I recommend this for any one of our viewers, listeners to try this. Is every time you daven a Shemona Esrei and you get to Modim, take a moment before Modim and think of just one thing that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could be just the fact that you had a good cup of coffee that morning. But whatever it is, just get that in mind and then say Modim. Okay, and you do that 3 times a day. We can let you off Musaf if but if you want to do Musaf as well, Matava my name. But it's a life-changing thing because you're training the neural pathways in your brain to think of positive things, and that's what this exercise did for me as well. And it also like transformed me completely. This whole exercise of avoiding negativity, of saying positive things and controlling my automatic negative comments and whatever. It makes you into a different person. And this sounds like this is exactly what you're doing over here. When your focus is on gratitude, on the good things, and instead of like, running your life and expecting things to be good, and then when things go wrong, you start cursing and saying, why me? Why me? That's a loser perspective.
So we discovered when we started working with gratitude, there was no research on it whatsoever. And it was so interesting afterwards.
Research on gratitude?
There was like such little, at that stage when we researched it, there was like a couple of white papers here and there. And And then we started looking much more into positive psychology, and there was lots of research coming out. And
that stuff's really old, the positive psychology
100%.
stuff. Yeah.
But they were so interesting of using gratitude in business and using it as like a tool to help staff engagement. It was always seen as like something like nice and fluffy, and it's a good thing to have. But when we started using it in business, we started seeing research that was starting to come out of it, and the benefits of it, that you're healthier, that you have better relationships, that your immunity is better. And we started to see these results with people. Yeah. And then when you look at it from a Torah perspective, it's a totally different realm. Firstly, it was so interesting. Every single parasha, if you look through it, has gratitude in it. It's so interesting.
Every single parasha has gratitude?
Yes.
Vaya kalpakude, come on.
All right, you want to get technical now, huh? So I'll show you. I challenged myself at one stage, because if you look through some, it's very easy, but if you look at when, with Adam Arishon, right, it says that what happened, that he was created, and he looks around, and what's the first thing that he does? He davens for rain.
Oh, he davens for rain, okay.
Right, and what does Rashi say when he davens for rain? Why wasn't there any rain?
Because he hasn't davened for it yet.
Right, and why was that? So if you look at Rashi says that he had to daven for it, and then the ground would go so that he could be makir tov, so that he could see the good. If he was just created, the Maharal says that if you picture Adam Arishon when he's created, you think like this beautiful like Garden of Eden with birds and waterfalls and trees, but really it was the Sahara Desert. There was nothing. He had to daven, and then when he davened and rain came, then everything sprouted. Mm-hmm. Yes, he saw little shoots, but he understood that he needed to daven, and then the rain, and then everything came up. And Rashi says, why? Because he needed to recognize the good. He needed to be makir tov. So you see that right from the beginning of creation, we were created to be able, with this ability that we have to see the good that Hashem gives us. The first thing we do in the morning when we wake up is, what do? We say Modeh Ani. Right? But there's no halacha to say Modeh Ani. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, it says V'toiv loymar. It's a good thing to do. But if you don't do it, why is it a good thing to do? Because it sets your mind to say, wow, I've woken up. I once saw this, it said 135,000 people die every night. I mean, I don't know if it's still the same. I looked it up a while ago. I don't know how they got to that. But they said roughly 135,000 people die.
Math. If you're doing like 9 billion people in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is.
That's what they said. But regardless of it, you wake up and you think like, woohoo, I'm alive. I made it. I'm not one of those 135,000 people. Just the fact of realizing those things, to say, wow, I have another day. If I'm here, I can make a difference. I can do something. Mm-hmm. And those realizations, and like I said, like you look through all of Shulchan Aruch, you look through all of the Torah, you see so many examples. If you look for them, you see about recognizing the good that is in our lives. Things might not always go the way that we want them to go, but they always land up being good for us. And that's how Hashem runs the world. And when we can see the good and we live with gratitude and we say, thank you for this and thank you for that. And we have, as you said, the attitude of gratitude determines your altitude. That's what they say about it. Because the more you can just say thank you, and the more you appreciate what you have, then the more you realize, wow, I actually have enough. I've been given so much. Because we often look, and it's so interesting in business, people say, I want this and I want this. Well, how much have you got? They go, well, so I say, well, you can see, right? Yeah. You can walk. Yeah. You can talk. You can eat. We don't think of those things, of being grateful for those things. But we make brachas on those things all the time. So our Yiddishkeit teaches us to live in a state of gratitude. Every single bracha is about appreciating, wow, I have a glass of water. Yeah. That's amazing. I'm thirsty and I have a glass of water. Where did that come from? There's a source to something. Wow, thank you, Hashem, for giving me that. So our whole lives, if we take that step back, we look at everything we have, it's all based on just having gratitude to Hashem, or being makir tov. And it's interesting, the language of being makir tov. Makir, that means that you have to recognize it. You have to look for it. It's there, but you have to look for it. You have to put, and as you said, you've got to put yourself into that state of mind to look for it. It's there, but do you see it? Do you appreciate it? Yeah. So it was so interesting when we brought that into business, and we got people in business to start looking for it, and people in their own lives, and they're like, wow, I actually am so blessed. And that realization was just, it was massive to be able to see that. Yeah. So like you see it from a Yiddishkeit perspective, and you see it, how it impacts people's lives. And everything comes from Torah. Everything's there. I remember once we were learning with Rabbi Avi Goldfein. He used to give a Thursday night shir in Alei Shur. Don't know if you remember. And I remember we got to a point where he quoted the Gemara in Sanhedrin that says, Chayv Adam loima bishvili nivra olam, that a person needs to say, the world was created for me.
Yeah.
I'll never forget his shir. He said, if you ever want to know something amazing, copy this and put it in your wallet. And anytime you doubt yourself, just think about this passage. And I did that. I copied it. It was just such. He says, what does it mean that the world was created for me? So he explains it. He says, I'm looking at this puzzle. If you think of a puzzle, would you frame a puzzle that's missing a piece? Well, not unless you're really arty, right? But you're not going to frame a puzzle that's missing a piece. So he says, you have to realize that what it means that the world was created for me, he says that you're a once-off opportunity. There was never anyone like you from the creation of Adam, and there never will be anyone like you until Mashiach comes. You, with your particular blends of talents, born to particular parents at a particular place and at a specific time, were created with only a mission that you can do. And you cannot swap your task with anyone else in this world. And he ends off like this, and he says that all of the forefathers and all of the people in history are waiting for you to do your task, because their lives are not complete without you fulfilling your mission.
Wow, that's a heavy responsibility. Wow.
But it's amazing when you think of that and you think wow, that's phenomenal. Meaning that the whole puzzle is waiting for me, because the whole of Jewish history, the whole of world history.
All those other losers aren't doing their bit. What good does it mean me to put my thing when other people aren't putting
it? You're right, 100%. So that shows our responsibility to help others as well. That's the beautiful part of it. That's the whole mission in Perkei Avos, right? Right? I have to see, but it's not only about me. There's other people. And that's what I realized in my journey. It's that you got to work on yourself, but when you see that in other people, you got to help other people as well. And that's the beauty of ourselves, is that if we see someone having a bad day, be there for them. If you see someone going through a rough time, just be there for them. Just acknowledge them. I tried to do crazy experiments to see how people react. It fascinates me. So I like, if you're driving and you ever get stuck in traffic, right? I'll wave at people next to me. I'll wave and smile. People look at me and go and then I'll wave and smile back, and people eventually they get the smile and they think, okay, this guy's nuts.
My kids used to play that game when we were in traffic. They call it sweet and sour.
Yes, exactly. It's different when you're a kid and you're an adult driving and you're waving at the person. They think, who's this crazy guy? But I would do that in the shops. If you walk around the shops, how many people are smiling?
Yeah.
People are miserable. So smiling people don't think, why are you smiling at me? I just don't. And it's so interesting when we do that. I was walking along a promenade a couple of months ago, and I thought, I'm going to try this on. I walked past people, good morning, and I'd smile and say, oh, what a beautiful day.
This is South Africa. So everyone in South Africa, you walk through the street, it's good morning, good, hello, how are you?
Yes.
Complete strangers that you're just walking past, good morning, sir, good morning, how are you? Good.
Yeah.
It's that's one of my biggest praises of the people of South Africa, is they are so friendly. It's unbelievable. It's almost unnervingly friendly.
Yes. But what's so interesting is that even people who weren't smiling, you say good morning and they smile, and then they smile at you.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing, is that we just don't live like that. And if we would smile at smiling, I saw a research, it was incredible. They said that by smiling at one person, right, you have an ability to impact up to 1,000 people a day. They socially,
because it's viral.
Because it's viral. So what happens is, you smile at one person, they'll smile at someone else, and they'll smile at someone else, and they say through 3 people all smiling, and they show how everyone's linked. You have the ability to impact up to 1,000 people just by smiling at 3 people a day.
I would be surprised if the number's that low.
So I'm saying that's but you think how it's smiling doesn't take very long. It's a very quick thing. You don't even have to talk to the person. Yeah. You can just smile, and the brain is wired that 2 things react: when a person yawns, and when a person smiles. Right? If a person yawns, everyone starts doing that.
How does the yawn reflex work? I don't know. But the smile is obvious. It's it lifts the mood. I suppose the yawn does the opposite. But then you should also say for the same thing when somebody's got the sour face and walking around, and it also brings people down.
100%. But it's interesting that when someone yawns, everyone else starts yawning, right? And when someone smiles, it's amazing how people smile back. We have that ability to impact people around us.
Yeah.
And that's what we realized through gratitude. We did this. I showed them once a video. It was amazing. He was called, I think it was Peter the Packer. He was a Down syndrome guy who got it's a real story. He got a job at a supermarket, and he was a packer. You know, so people put their stuff through, and he packs it into packets for them and he wanted to impact people. And he thought, how can I make their shopping experience better? So what he did is he started writing notes of saying, thank you for shopping with us, signed from Peter the Packer. Yeah. And when people came, he would just put this note into their shopping things. And the manager walks around one day and he sees this long line of people by this till. So he goes over the speaker and he says, we need more tills open, more stuff, come and open your tills. And he's walking and he sees everyone by their tills. And he says, no, go to this till. They said, no, we want to be in this till. And he goes like
you're going to wait extra to go in this one?
So there was this long line of people and no one would go to another till. And he said, why? They said, no, we want Peter the Packer. So he said, why do you want Peter the Packer? He said, no, we love his notes. And people would come just to shop there, just to get this note from Peter the Packer.
And they're prepared to spend extra time in the line to sit with it.
And people would even drive, instead of going to a closer shop, there were people who would drive further just to come to get this note from Peter the Packer because he made them feel good.
That's pretty wild.
So I showed this video, right? And about 3 weeks later, my friend phones me up. He says, you got to come past my office.
Yeah.
So I go, he says, no, I have to show you this. You got to come past my office. So I went past his office. So I sit down and he gives me a piece of paper. And what does it say? There's a handwritten note that says, thank you so much for placing your order with us. I so appreciate it because it helps me to support my family. And it's signed from one of the workers in this business. And how it came about, I said, what's this? He says, do you remember you showed that video? I said, yeah. He says, well, one of the guys here in the business who packs the boxes decided he's going to do the same thing.
Was like a kind of an Amazon
it's a hardware store. So guys order products.
Yeah.
And they
pack them up ready for delivery. And
exactly.
And he just popped the note inside.
And he popped the note on top and he sealed the box. So no one knew he was doing it. Oh, my word. And this guy phoned up the CEO and he says, your note, he says, I just want to let you open up this box and your note blew me away. He goes, what note? So he says, the note that your guy put in there. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. Is everything okay? So he said, can you send me a copy of it? So he sent him a picture of this note. So he called this guy in and he said, what's this? He goes, I'm sorry. He thought like he'd been caught out or something. He says, no. He says, like, what are you doing? He says, well, I thought about that Peter the Packer and I thought, I just want to thank people for ordering the products from us because they're giving me a job and that's allowing me to support my family. And I just want to say thank you to them.
Jeez, wow.
And the customers were like, after we said, how long have you been doing this for? He said, I just started last week. Yeah. But I thought about it and I thought, I want to do the same thing. Yeah. And after that, the CEO kept on getting messages from people almost on a daily basis of saying, we loved your note. And it was just something so small, and he did his own initiative.
And the only reason it worked was because it was handwritten.
It was genuine.
Because it was genuine.
Yes.
Not because the boss said, please write a note and put it into every box. And it was like, then, okay, thank you, Bing, Bing. It came from him, and it was spontaneous. It was his own initiative that he did it.
And it was in his handwriting. The spelling was terrible. You could work out some of the words, but it was so genuine. And people were so touched by it. He said, you cannot believe the loyalty that it created. And he said, like, all these type of things just kept on feeding back into what we're doing. We're saying, like, wow, gratitude is so powerful.
Sure.
When you share gratitude with people. So I tried this as well. There was another company where I said to the CEO, how often have you thanked your staff? He said, what do you mean? I said, like,
I pay them every month.
Exactly. He says, I tell them thank you. I said, no, when was the last time you gave them a handwritten note? He said, never. So I said, I want you to try this. So he had like a small group of like an exco of people. And what he did is he wrote them each a small note. It took him about 30 seconds a person. Dear so-and-so, I appreciate the work you do for me. I just want you to know I acknowledge it and I appreciate it and I just want to say thank you. and he left it on their desk for them. And he said, you cannot believe the feedback that these people came back and told him. They were like crying. And he was like, I just said thank you to them. You know, it wasn't a big thing. I say thank you to them all the time. I said, no. It's the way that you did it. They appreciate it. They say, wow, you appreciate me. You acknowledge me. I'm a human being.
But you know, that's actually something that I just had this little breakthrough this Purim yesterday. You know, I don't like go and make 100 packages of mishloach manos and like here's one for you and here's one for you and here's one for you, and somebody else comes who gives me a mishloach manos and say, oh wait, I've got one for you too here. You know, that's I'm not knocking it. That's what people do. It's great, but I felt they were like I made 2 packages this year. 2 nice ones, you know. So with a nice bottle of wine and some home baked bread and stuff, fillers and whatever. But one I went to give to a good friend of mine, and I just I came to his house and I handed it over to him. I said, I just wanted to let you know that like I really appreciate everything that you've done for me as a friend, and went through all the things and whatever. And it was just like so much more meaningful of a gift. Where it's not just like here's a package for you, happy Purim. But when it's delivered with the actual feeling, I think that's if you want to do that, what Mishloach Manos is supposed to do. And bringing that friendship, I think it's like such a powerful thing to actually put like a little bit of kavana, like as they say in davening, it's better to say a little bit with a lot of kavana than everything with no kavana. Yeah, and I think it was like that also with those gifts, and I thought, wow, I don't know why I just tumbled to that this year, but so I'll tell you what.
So besides, you reminded me of something else I did. Is that I love sharing gratitudes in the businesses. A lot of people don't, like when they see me, they just call me Mr. Gratitude, because that's what I became. I was like, there's Mr. Gratitude. They don't know my name.
Oh, hold on, you're Mr. Happy, I thought.
I am Mr. Happy, that's true. But it was so funny. I said, you know my name? No, you're just Mr. Gratitude. And in so many businesses, that's what they call me. They just call me Mr. Gratitude. And I said, do you remember my name? Don't know your name, but you're Mr. Gratitude to us. And that's how
I'll take that.
And that's how it became. Like in all the business, it was just so amazing. Like, do you guys know my name? No, they have no idea who you are. But your name, but we call you Mr. Gratitude, because when you come in, that's what you do, and it changed people. I mean, the letters I got from people of like people who are like depressed and having bad things, and they like sent us through these like thank you letters to me. They said like, you won't know, but if I don't tell you how appreciative I am of what you've done for me, and we're like, wow. So the one thing I started doing about 2 years ago. I started flying quite a lot to different places, and I thought, you know what? I saw something. I can't remember where I saw it, but I wanted to bring gratitude into these things. So I got little cards that say thank you on them made. All it just says thank you, and on the other side it's blank lines, and I just fill it in. So what I did is that the first time I flew, I wanted to try something. So when I got on, I bought little chocolates. And I just said thank you, and I gave it to the air hostesses, and I said, this is just for you guys and the captains. I bought like 10 chocolates, whatever it is, and I just said, just to stay, thank you for taking your time out today and flying me. So at first I'd give it when I was leaving the plane.
Yes.
I say, thank you so much. Here's a little gift for you to say thank you.
Yeah.
And they loved it. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I do it
before.
When I do it before.
Okay.
So I like social experiments. Yes. I like trying things myself. I want to see. So what I did is I tried it the opposite way around. So when I walked onto the plane, I made sure I was the last person on, right? Yeah. And I walked in and I just said, this is just for you and the crew, and I just want to say thank you. And they were like, wow, thank you so much. You've made our day. And okay, I didn't think much of it, And when we landed, it was so interesting. The first time that we landed, the captain comes over, welcome to so-and-so. And he said, and the guy who gave us the chocolates, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I was like, oh, okay. And before I got off, the stewardess comes and says, can you please stay behind? The captain just wants to speak to you. So I was like, okay. So everyone gets off. I'm the last guy off. They open up the cockpit door, right? And the captain they say, we just want to say thank you so much. Their chocolate was so meaningful. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is something. So the next flight, I did the same thing. I was the last person on, and the same thing happened. We land, they make an announcement. Thank you so much to the guy who gave us the chocolates. And they asked me to stay behind again. It was different. It was a different crew.
Different crew.
And I was like, okay, I'm obviously, because
This is internal in South Africa.
Yeah. I thought like, wow, I'm obviously onto something over here. And so I started asking them, you know, I wanted to know why it was so meaningful to them. And they just said, and it was a small chocolate. It wasn't like a big slab. It was like literally a sort with just a little note. And they said, like I said, I was starving. I said, like, you know, and this just gave me like a bit of a sugar boost. And he said, like, wow, it was just so thoughtful of you.
Yeah.
You know, and the guy said, like, it was just totally unexpected. Like, you just really blew us away. It was, we've never been thanked like that. And it was just something like, so unexpected. It was just really meaningful. So I started doing this. I got like proper cards made after that, like with my name and things on it, and it always amazes me how the reaction that people. So one time I got off, and there was a guy walking behind me, and he keeps following me. So I said, like, is everything okay? He says, you blew me away. I said, like, what do you mean? He says, what do you do? So I told him. I said, why? He says, I just saw you give those people chocolates.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. He says, why? So I explained to him what I do.
Yeah.
So he was like, no. He says, that's amazing. He says, I've got to think how I can use this. He says, so he took my number and he phoned me later in the day. He says, you know, I still can't get out of my mind what you did and the impact that it had. He said, he said, I'm here for business. On my way to the business meeting, I stopped to buy little chocolates. And when I walked into the business meeting, I gave it to all the people who were there. And he said, you can't believe their reaction. He says, it was a totally different business meeting.
Yeah.
It changed the whole attitude. And everyone was like friendly and thankful. He says, you can't believe how it changed the whole business meeting. He says, like, you're definitely onto something and I'm going to use this every time going forward now. And it was amazing how he saw what I was doing.
Yeah.
And he was like, I see the impact. And he wanted to take that same thing and change other people's lives.
I'm listening to you talking. I think I've got to try this next time. That's powerful. It's such a small gesture, and
because it doesn't have to be big things.
Yeah,
but it's the same. I was not expecting that reaction whatsoever, and it just shows how we impact other people around us. It really is, and that's what we notice to all these values and these things. I shared with you earlier that one of the greatest stories is that we had 4 people who left my friend's work to go start their own churches, non-Jewish people, but they really felt passionate and they wanted to go and they wanted to spread values. Mm-hmm. And this one guy went and he started this new church, and he came back a couple of months and says, no, his church won an award for being the best church. And we're like, wow. And he says, it's all thanks to you guys. I'm thinking, okay, here's a rabbi, you know, who's created 4 priests. Like, I'm good in care of it. I don't know it's that good. I'm not trying to put that on my resume. But it really was like that. And he said that what happened is that he took the same values of like honesty, integrity, loyalty, and he brought it into his church. And this is what he preached: gratitude the whole time. And he said that what the biggest story that won him like being the best church is that there was a person walking in like a downtown, and they saw an envelope fall out of someone's bag. They went and they picked it up. It was just full, a wad of cash. You know, and you're thinking like, woohoo, I won the lottery. Like, if I take this, no one's going to know anything different about it. They've lost it, finders keepers.
Right.
And that's it. But he saw this person walking
even
in. Even
halakhically, there's yesh.
100%. and especially like if you think like, I don't know, if you're walking in Manhattan or somewhere like that, you know, anywhere where there's a lot of people.
But it's not technically yesh because he saw the person who dropped it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he saw the person who dropped it, but they had yesh, because as soon as they noticed that it's gone, they're going to have yesh.
But if he's watching her the whole time.
Yes. Well, he can watch them walk off into the distance.
Yeah. I suppose you could do that.
You could. So anyway, he decides to follow the person. So, you know, they were walking quite ahead. He picked it up and he follows the person and he's trying to catch up. He didn't catch up. So eventually sees them walk into a building. And he was about 30, 40 seconds later after them, and he walked in. There's this woman sitting on the couch sobbing and everyone's around them. And he goes up to this person and he says, is this yours? And he said this woman looked up to him and just had like this look of shock, of like, you know, she couldn't believe. So she said to him, she said, I'd just been to the bank. There's 10,000 Rand in cash. I just drew it to go pay for a funeral. There's a family member's funeral this weekend. Those are all the savings we have to pay for the funeral. And when I got to the office, as I walked into the office, I opened up my bag to check it was still there, and I see all the money's gone. And she started freaking out. She was like, it's all gone. And in you walk in, you give me my money. It doesn't have her name on it. It was just a blank envelope with all this cash in. So everyone starts, like, there's this big commotion. And so the CEO of the company comes. He doesn't know what's going on. He comes and goes, what's going on? So this woman says, you can't believe what just happened to me. So he looks at this person and he says, like, you're walking in the middle of that. What made you give the money back? Like most people in society would find us keepers, woohoo, it's my lucky day, I won the lotto. He said, what made you give it back? He said, no, our priest teaches us that there's certain values that you must have. You must have gratitude, you must have honesty, and this is what he preaches to us, and this is how we live, and this is what we must do. So it's not mine. I must give it back. So I'm returning it. And the CEO was blown away, took this person's number, he phoned and he reported this whole story to it. And it just shows by doing little things how you can, that we don't really realize the impact we have on other people's lives. I know when we did this gratitude, so many times people still come back and say, you don't realize how it changed my life. That just recognizing the good in our lives that we have on a daily basis, we don't really appreciate it and recognize it. But smiling at someone, doing little things for people is huge.
Yeah, that impact is amazing. And I want to also hear about the other impactful things that you're doing, like Hatzolah. You're working with Hatzolah in South Africa.
I am.
How'd you get involved with them?
So I've always had a passion for medical things. I don't know if I ever would have been a doctor.
Yeah.
It was never like my journey from a young age. I always wanted to teach and to give back. Like I never thought of being a doctor. There wasn't even, but I've always loved the medical side of things. We have a very medical family. My brothers were both, they're not doctors, but very involved in medical things. It was just part of it. So it was always something I wanted to do. And I never really had the opportunity. I was always, like the course is quite intensive. It's a 3-month, very, very intensive course. And I just never really had the time to do it, but it was always on my radar. And there came a certain point about 10 years ago where I had a bit more free time. I restructured things and there was a course available, and I thought if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And I thought, like, this is just an amazing way to give back to the community. And our family has always been very big in being involved in communal organizations. Yeah. My grandmother was like that, my father, both my parents were like that. And it was always about giving back. We were always growing up, so I was always looking for opportunities to be involved in organizations that could give back in really meaningful ways. And Hatzolah just always appealed to me. I was like, there's no better way than being there when it's the person's most challenging day or darkest time, and you can really support them and help them. It was just really meaningful. So I thought, you know what, I have to do it. My brother actually did it the year before, and he said to me, he said, no, you got to join us. Like, you got to come, like, you'll love this. So when the opportunity came, I grabbed it. It was very, very intense, but it was really worth it.
How long was the course?
So the course was 3 months. It was 3 months part-time. So I was still working, and it worked that it was every second Sunday from 8 in the morning till 5 at night, and then 3 nights a week was like, I think, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, from about 6 p.m. till about 12 p.m. So it was...
Wow, that's intense.
It's very, very intense. There's a lot of material. The tests there were lots of tests because you're dealing with people's lives over here. It's not like little things. So you had to know your stuff. It's not like you can get like an 80% pass mark. I can save you 80%. I'm sorry about the other 20%. I didn't learn that.
Okay, yeah.
So you really had to know stuff. So it was really, really intensive. And they really pushed you a lot because they want you to know your stuff. You're saving other. So it was people's lives at risk. So it was really, really intensive. It taught me a number of things, and it was really amazing that when you really want something in life, we have the ability and the resilience and the stamina to really achieve things. If you really want something and you can understand, like when you put effort into something, like Gemara, when if someone says, I got you matzati, you can believe him.
Or as somebody else wise said, in life you can do anything you want, you just can't do everything you want.
Yes, that's true. So you have to decide what you want. But if you really want something, you can really make it work.
Yeah.
So there was a certain point where I was teaching every single night of the week. So there was no way I could give up 3 nights of the week to do a Hatzolah course for that long. It just wasn't practical. But I'd restructured things up and I said, like, I really want to do this. This is something that I'm really passionate about and I have to make the time to do it. So for 3 months, I restructured things. And it was. I always look back at that course, and I learned a lot from that, because I think, like, it is true. If you really want something, we make a lot of excuses in life about things. I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. But if you really want something, there's nothing that stops you from achieving it.
Yeah.
And I'm a really big believer in that. And when I did that course, and, like, you really push yourself a lot, and when you pass, you think, like, wow. You really can do a lot of things in life. And then you think to yourself, how many other things have I given myself excuses about that I couldn't do, that if I really pushed myself, I probably could do them. And it was
often is a question of priorities.
100%.
Sometimes there are good reasons why you can't do the things that you really want to do, because something else is going to have to give.
It's true. But on the other hand, there's also that saying, have I ever used this excuse for things that I haven't achieved? And so, like, maybe, there are priorities, but maybe there are things, like, I think in business, and you say, in business, it's all about the effort. You think, like, did I really put enough effort into that? Did I really try my best? Did I really give my best? Did I really push myself? And sometimes the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, and when I look back at that course, it really stretched me. It really did. But you think, like, wow, you really can do it. Mm-hmm. If you focused on something and it's a priority, there's nothing that you can't achieve. And it was an amazing thing being part of it.
I don't think you would have ever made it to the NBA.
No. However,
no matter how hard you tried.
No, that's not true. There have been, I don't know if there was a guy, I don't know if you saw recently, there was the shortest guy, I think he's like 5'11". Okay, I'm not 5'11", yes. Right? I'm a little bit shorter. But what I'm saying is that he's not 6'5". There's a guy who's 5'11".
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think he can slam,
Okay.
But he still made it in.
Yeah.
If that was my goal, I mean, I don't know if that was, I don't think that would ever be my goal. But it just shows you, it always reminds me of a story. One of the most amazing stories I ever saw was the British Olympic 8-man rowing team. You know those boats where they got those 8 men in the regattas?
Yes.
So the British Olympic rowing team, 2012, I think it was, were known as the worst rowing team in history. These guys had lost for the 2 years in the last Olympics. They came last, and 2 years in their preparation, they had not won anything. They had not come anywhere close to winning something. So they got together and they said, right, we have 3 options. 1, we quit. Mm-hmm. 2, we continue doing what we do and still come last. Mm-hmm. 3, we have to change things.
Okay.
So they decided they didn't want to quit because this is what they've given their life to. They decided they did not like losing, so their only option was option 3.
Try something else.
So they came up with a strategy. And this was their strategy. They had one saying: will it make the boat go faster? Mm-hmm. This was their strategy. And for the next 2 years, all they focused on was, will it make the boat go faster? Guys, tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Will it make the boat go faster? Yes. We're all there. And everyone had to buy into it. Mm-hmm. Guys, let's go out for a drink. Will it make the boat go faster? No, they didn't do it. Everything was focused on, will it make the boat go faster?
I thought you were going to tell me they're going to start trying with new strategies of how to row or something.
So what happened was, this was their only strategy. For 2 years, that's what they worked on. They made it into the Olympics. They get on the bus to go to the opening games of the Olympics. Right? It's the most watched sport event. They get on the bus, and one of the guys turns around and says to them, guys, is this going to make the boat go faster? So they all like turn around and look at the guy and think like,
what are you referring to?
What are you going on about? We're going to the opening of the Olympic Games. Like, there's nothing bigger. We're going to walk through the stadium. Everyone's going to clap and see us. He says, yes, but tomorrow morning is our first training, and our first race is in 2 days. If we have a late night tonight, it's going to affect our training tomorrow. And what's going to happen to our first race? So they said to him, you're right. They got off the bus. They watched the opening ceremony from their hotel room and went to bed early.
Okay.
So then what happened was they win the first race, they lose the second race, they go into a knockout stage, which they win, and they're now in the final. Then they make it through to the final, and they come out of this final and they start at this blistering pace. And the most interesting thing is you listen to the commentators. Oh, they've come out too fast. I don't think they can keep the pace. The other teams are going to catch up. They come to the halfway mark and they're still ahead. And people are like thinking, maybe these guys can do it now. And you just start hearing their attitude and their tone of voice. And 3/4 and they're still like a quarter of a boat ahead. And the guys are saying, these guys can really do this. And and eventually they win it. Yeah. And no one can believe that they won it.
Yeah.
And then they interviewed them and they said, like, how did you turn around from being the world's worst to winning Olympic gold? How did you do it? And they said, for 2 years, we were focused on one thing. Will it make the boat go faster? That was it. It's all they wanted to know.
Yeah.
And they said, that's why we won. Because we were so dedicated to having one goal and to having one thing that's all we put our energy into. And, so coming to the same point about priorities, you're right. Did they sacrifice a lot?
I'm sure they did. You ask their families,
100%. Did they achieve their goals?
Oh, yeah.
100%. So you're right. Life is about balance, but it also shows you that you've got to have very good priorities. They've got to be balanced. It's like we come back to that work thing. If you're going to have a work that says business before family, and that's going to be your priority.
Well, if that's your priority, that'll work.
100%.
And the people who were there and bought into it had regrets about having families.
Yeah, and that's how you can see that they bought into this, and for them, families weren't a big thing for them. And you can imagine what their families were like because of that.
Yeah.
But it comes back to that same thing, that in life, if you've got the right priorities and you know what you're focused on, then if you look at like that, if you look at like our great sages, they often say it wasn't that they were the brightest people. I mean, they were very intelligent, yes. They spoke about themselves. But they said it was just about being focused on achieving that success in learning or whatever it was. It's that when we're focused on growth and we're focused on learning whatever it is we want, if that's your priority, that's where you're going to put your energy into.
Right.
That's where you're going to be successful in life. So... Yeah, people often say,
that's not rocket science. The things that you are focusing on and practicing the most are the things that you're going to get good at.
Yeah. So, for me, that's why I joined Hatzolah. It was something I felt really passionate about. It was something I felt is a priority because I want to give back in a really meaningful and powerful way. Yeah. And it was about saying that's a priority. And even now, right? So you've got shifts and you're on call and, sometimes you won't spend like a Shabbos meal with your family because you're running around. They understand it. They see what you're doing. It sets an example for them. But it's a priority that we've all set and saying like that's an important thing to be part of. And my family knows and they agree that that's an important thing. So when I run off in a Shabbos meal, they understand that there's a value to life. They understand that there's a higher level of priority than just about you.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of reasons why I joined it, but that was like part of it, of saying that in life, it's not only about you. It's about other people. It's about giving back. It's about setting that example for other people. Right. And it really has. It's been an amazing journey. I mean, we see difficult things. We deal with difficult things. It's not always easy. But it's really meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, tell us some war stories, inspiring, funny.
So I've got to be careful because obviously for confidentiality and things like that, we don't generally like to share. But there are funny things that you see. We got called to someone one night. It was an uncontrolled bleeding. So like you rush in and you go, where's the patient? And she goes, I'm over here. And she goes, like, where's the uncontrolled bleeding? She says, my pimple won't stop.
What do you do in that situation? Let's take a look at it.
Exactly. I think we can control that, and you got like 6 responders who've all like rushed in because it came out as uncontrolled bleeding, and you think, get the bandages and get this ready and get that ready, and you walk in and like there's ladies that are like, well, my pimple won't stop bleeding, and you think, okay, we can sort that out. No, we had, for some people, for them it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like we've had people, like there was a guy he had an operation, And the only thing he really wanted to do was to just have a nice bath. He's been showering, but he really loved bathing. And he ran himself a bath, and he got in the bath, and he didn't quite think what would happen to get out the bath.
An older guy. He was in his 80s, and he didn't really have much support at home. His wife was there, and she's also in her 80s. And he ran the bath, and now he thinks, I have a problem. There's no handles. He had a hip replacement, so he couldn't exactly lift himself up. And now he's thinking, how do I get out the bath? So, so he called us and he said, like, I'm sorry, but I need your help. I need to get out the bath. So it's like, it's like we see the funny, like, unfortunately we see, but you also do see the funny stuff of things, I shared with you earlier, one of the funniest calls I went on, there was, unfortunately, there was a man in his late 80s, and he passed away, and we asked the wife, do you want to come say goodbye? And so she walked in, and it's like a very somber environment, like here's a person, unfortunately, who's just passed away, and she walks in, and she says to us, he's fully covered, she can't see him. She says, are you sure he's dead? And we were like, yeah, no, we're sorry to tell you, he's definitely dead. She said, are you sure he's not going to wake up? We're like, no, he's not going to wake up. She says, if they take him to the morgue and they phone me, I'm not coming to fetch him. And we're like, okay, you don't have to worry. He's not waking up. You don't have anything to worry about. He's definitely passed on, and he's not going to be phoning you later. You're like, normally people come in and they're crying, and and all she wanted to know is that he's not going to phone her later to come and fetch her, because she's not going. She's not getting out of bed to come and fetch him. Sounds like he's in a better place.
Yes, like I said, you never know what happens behind the scenes. He might say, "Yeah, I'm also in a better," but so sometimes people just really surprise you. Like, you don't know what you're going to get, and sometimes people really surprise you with their reactions to things. And for them it's an emergency. Like this woman with her pimple, not for him, but for her it was an emergency. Didn't even require an ambulance, but we helped her out. But it's always amazing. The most amazing thing to me about it is how appreciative people are.
Yeah.
And that's
back to gratitude.
Yeah, and that's like people, like, we need to be like, we're like, would you like something to drink? Would you like something? No, it's fine. No, please take something. You're like, it's like a real Jewish home. Please take something. We really, no, you got to have something. You got to people on Friday night, they got this whole lavish meal. You haven't started your meal yet. You're thinking, that looks good. We sit down enjoying you. Yeah. But people are, that's the most amazing thing, is that people are so appreciative of having such a service like that, and having people who volunteer their time and help. I had a guy we helped. He phoned me yesterday, and it was Purim, and he said, I was just thinking about it again, and I just want to just say thank you for coming to help my wife. He said, like, I really appreciate it, and just having you. He knew me, and he said, just having you there calmed me down, made me feel better. And I just want to say we're so appreciative of that. And it's those little things that, as I said, everything for me is about gratitude. But when people recognize it and they appreciate it, it's amazing how their attitude changes to things.
Yeah. So having heard about your work with Hatzolah and gratitude, and I want to circle back to what we started with in your interest in psychology, because this is, I heard that and I thought, I've got to press you on this question. There's a question that always bothers me, and I always have to ask people who have an interest in this, how do you deal with it? And that is, we know that we have our cognitive biases, and that means that you almost cannot trust yourself to interpret facts or whatever. And so how do you know that your opinion on any given issue, whether it's religion, politics, family interactions, interpersonal things and whatever, everyone always makes up in their own mind that they are in the right and the other person is wrong. There's nobody in the world who, unless complete sociopaths who know that they're doing bad things and say, I don't care. But most people, and this is the source of so many conflicts between people, is just either a lack of communication, lack of understanding. But everyone has made the story in their mind that they're in the right, and look, it's so obvious that I'm in the right. So how do you have checks and balances on yourself to overcome your own cognitive biases?
So it's a good question. So I think there's three things that stand out for me when you ask that. One is, as you correctly said, the Gemara says when you do an Avera 3 times, now you think it's a mitzvah.
Right.
Because we convince ourselves that it's right for me to do. This is who I am. I can do this, and it's fine. So when I start learning with people, I always tell them I have 2 rules for them when we start learning with people. I say, rule number 1 is never put anyone on a pedestal and think that they can't make a mistake. Don't follow a religion based on one person. So you'll have a Rov and, my Rov is amazing. Because what will eventually happen is that they will do something wrong that you think is wrong, and they will disappoint you. And if you're going to base your whole religion on that person, and I saw this so many times, unfortunately, where people had a certain role model, and that person would do something wrong, and it destroyed their whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of sort of a cult figure.
Yeah.
And either you're going to continue having to convince yourself that actually they were completely in the right and they were framed, or they were innocent and whatever, or else you're going to be completely turned off everything.
Yeah, there was a group of students once. They were actually my friends, and we had a certain madrich, and he was very close, and he had done a lot of kiruv with these guys. And they went out on a Motzei Shabbos, and they saw him in a club without his yami on. They didn't know that he wasn't 100% from. He had never told them like that. And they saw him in this club. He didn't see them. They saw him, and they looked at it, and everything he had achieved with them until that point went out the window. They literally gave up everything that they had. They were so flawed. It left them in such a state of shock that they gave up everything from that point. And it was hard for them to come back after that.
Yeah.
To answer my own things, so this guy that I'm friendly with, Norman, it's very interesting. Once a year he would sit with me, and he's got a goal file. And he would say to me like this, he says, you know me better than anyone else. If I do something wrong, you'll call me out on it. And he would say to me, I want to know, where do you think I can grow, and where do you think I can improve? He said, you know me and you can call me out, and I want to know, where do you think I need to grow, and where do you think I need to improve? Where do you see that I'm making mistakes within myself, and where I can improve within myself? And we would discuss this, and I thought, that's such a beautiful way to do that. So I would ask him the same question. I say, just because you view me as maybe your rabbi or someone, but you see those same things in me. Where do you think I can improve? Where do you see? And we developed a relationship that we would call each other out on things like that. If someone would ever step out, and he would say, I know that you know more than me, but that's okay. So my second rule when I would learn with people, I was always say to them, the biggest rule in Yiddishkeit, and rule number 1 is oseh lecha rav. You have to have a rabbi.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mentor or someone, you have to have someone who you can go to and you can discuss things with, and who you have made as whatever they're going to tell you, you're going to follow them. Not in a cultish way, but in a way that they are there for your growth, and they have nothing to gain, but they want to help you.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the first thing that I did, was finding someone who I could go to, and I could say to them, this is what I'm thinking, this is my thought process. Am I right? Am I wrong? Is this the way I should do it? Isn't the way I should do it?
Yeah.
So when I was at Yeshiva, it was Rabbi Goldfarb.
Yeah.
I remember once I went to him, and it was the end of my second year of learning. I went to him and I said, someone's offered me a job. It was quite a good paying job. But I would have to leave Yeshiva. So he said something. He said, what was your plan? I said, no, my plan was to learn. He said, had you taken on that was going to be your plan to learn? I said, yeah. He says, you'll never see any bracha from the job. I was like, whoa, that's quite hectic. He says, don't take the job. You'll never see any bracha from it. I was like, wow, okay. So I said to him, why? So he said, you must know, once you've dedicated yourself to learning, then the Yetzer Hara will do anything to distract you from it. He said, if you hadn't dedicated it, we can discuss it. It ended up being that the position they offered me, 4 months later, the whole company closed down. Wow. I mean, I don't know if he had the Ruach HaKodesh of that, but, he just said, this is the way halacha works. This is the way that things work. So afterwards, I would always go and discuss things with him. And, he just had incredible insight into situations and into people. And it was amazing. For each person, he would guide them differently. Depending on what you needed, You know, I remember there was some guys learning with us and they wanted to come learn in Eretz Yisrael, and for them we would say, for you it's good to go. Like, yes, I think that's good for where you are.
Yeah.
You know, and for other people, this is where you need to be.
Yeah, and that was actually what Rabbi Bokatz was saying.
Yes.
You heard the podcast.
Yeah.
He was saying that, like, one after the other, two guys came during Sfiras HaOmer. Each one asked a shayla if they could shave, and one he said no, one he said yes.
It's like, oh, I wanted that answer. And that's when I realized, I mean, even before that, I was always on a journey of self-development. And when I would learn Musar, it was always, the one thing was always about being very critical of ourselves. And Musar was very big into that, of like, you know, you got to be critical on yourself and you got to put yourself down and you got to like really think about your thought processes. But we are biased. And it's very difficult to see out of that. The Ramchal writes, it's like a person is in a maze. You know, or Chazal say that a person in prison can't free himself. We're biased by other things. We need someone on the outside to guide us. And sometimes we need those people. So I must say I've been very blessed with having those type of people in my life. When I was in Kollel, I had a Rosh Kollel in Rabbi Grossness, one of the wisest people also. I'd go and discuss things with him and say, you know, this is what I'm thinking. What's your approach? And the Torah Hashkofa that they had was just so real that I really attached to it. And it was always about having someone who I could go and ask those things to. This is what I'm struggling with. And you've got to be really willing to open up yourself up to people. You've got to find someone who you can be very vulnerable with and very real with. And if you can do that, they will help you in your self-development more than anything else. People who think they can do it themselves, you know, are really... I don't believe we can do it within. I think we can to a certain extent, but you are right. We have a bias towards ourselves because we have self-protection. And we're not really going to be so truthful and so honest with ourselves at that point. We do need people who are going to call us out on it.
Right.
And I think it's about having that Rov type of figure in your life that you can do that with, who's not afraid to do something and say, no, why did you do that? What was your thinking? Yeah. And I really saw the benefit in that when people would come and discuss things like that with me. And I was like, well, they're discussing that with me and they're getting so much benefit from that, then I need to be doing the same thing. Just as a psychologist, you know, they all have sessions with other psychologists to debrief and to have the same thing. We should all be having those type of sessions. I think for me, it's about having someone that you can really be real and honest with and open up about everything and help and get them to guide you. And that's like what I call it, like Osele Harav, is having that type of person.
And I think there's also a balance to be reached, because there are like some people who take that to an extreme and will, like, you know, phone to ask a shayla, you know, what color should they paint the walls in the house? And, you know, okay, there's some things that you really don't need to ask a shayla about, but when I think the critical factor, which is kind of what I also expose in my books with Ari Barak, is like, where is it a free will decision? And when you're confused about what is the right thing to do, as opposed to, you know, what segula should I or whatever, what color is, and as you say, that sort of Das Torah is like a very abused term nowadays. It's like, you know, people nowadays tend to go for this like thing where one person will paskin for an entire generation what they should be doing. It's like, no, that's not how Torah works.
No,
it's an individual thing, and you've got to have a Rav who knows you and who can talk to you. And as an adjunct to that, it's so important. Asay lecha Rav, kanei lecha chaver.
Yes, I was going to come to that after.
Right,
but yes,
I think it just you know, the little inspiration hit me right now that kinyan, who do you make a kinyan on, is your wife. If you've got the right kind of relationship with a wife, I think that is like really the most powerful thing to have, is having a wife who's a chaver, who can look at you and say, not beseder, or well done, or and you can accept that from her, and you can provide that to her as well. That's what I think what the Torah means when it says as a kenegdo, you have a helpmate who is against you. There's the one shot that if he's roy, then she's either, and if not, then she's kenegdo. But I think it comes together. You need somebody who's going to push back at you and not just let you get away with anything that you do.
No, I can vouch for, like, I know I don't think anything that I haven't achieved without, like, was all my wife's pushing. It really was. Like, Smicha was like, should I do it? She was like, no, you must do it. It was like everything that was always pushed through her. Yeah. And you're right. Rabbi Alon Joseph says, why does it say, Oseh lecha rav and koneh lecha chaver? You know? And he says, because to find a real friend, it's worth buying them. He says if you can find someone who's really going to be looking out for you, he says that type of person is worth even buying their friendship, because that's what a true friend does. And he says,
but it doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound. Yes.
How do you buy a friend? Like, they say, I've got some chocolates for you this week. I've got.
Come with me, you know. Yeah, but he uses that language, and he says that's what a kinyan is. That's exactly what it is. Is that you've got to have someone. That the whole purpose of a chaver is chibur. It's about joining things together. It's about that you joined. It's about being there for the same purpose, you know. And it was very funny. The person who made me religious landed up becoming not religious. It was so funny how he like swapped over. But we always had an amazing thing that even though he became not religious and he would go out to places I wouldn't go to, you know. But we always made time for each other in our own space, because our friendship was more important than anything else. It's like he says, like, I know you're not going to come with me, and that's fine. And I say, well, I know you're not going to come with me, and that's fine. And we would make space for each other because we valued the friendship more than anything else, because we knew that we could be there for each other and support each other. And that's really what friendship is really all about. It's those people who are going to call you out and say, you know, don't be silly. Like, why are you doing that? You know? And they're going to be the ones who are going to call you out, and they're going to be the ones to come and help you. You know, when you knock someone at 2 o'clock in the morning, those are the guys that you want. And it was really interesting. About 2 years ago, I went through a really difficult patch, you know, and you see who your true friends are. And it was amazing to see those people who like really come out and who really there for you. And you say like, wow, I've been so blessed to have people like that in my life.
Yeah.
And those are the same people who'll call you out. Yeah, I once had a madrich. I was in grade 10, and I got involved with some guys I shouldn't have got involved with. And one night, this guy pulled me aside, and he said to me, he said, like, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? He says, why are you associating with them? I said, what do you care? You know, like that same attitude. He says, because those aren't the people you should be associating with. Why are you doing that? And like, he really gave me a hard time about it.
Sorry, who was he?
He was a madrich that I had. I was part of Bnei Akiva, and he was a madrich I'd become very, very close with. And he saw what was happening, and like he really cared. And he pulled me aside one night, and he said, like, what are you doing? These aren't the guys for you. Like, don't change yourself for other people. That, you know, this isn't where you should be. And it was a big turning point for me, and I thought a lot about it. And you know, I moved away, and I always had it in the back of my mind of like, wow, that conversation was a life-changing conversation for me. And many years later, it was about 6 years later, I went up to him and I said, you know, I just want to tell you something. He says, it's a pleasure. I said, what do you mean? I said, you ruined the whole thing. I had this whole speech in my mind. He says, I know, you've been thinking about it for a while. I said, yeah, I really thought about it, and I really want you to know that night was properly life-changing for me, and I want you just to know I really appreciate that night. He said, I know. He said, I can see. He said, I just saw that wasn't the thing for you, and I didn't want you to go down the wrong path. So I really wanted the best for you. And he had nothing to gain by it. Really, like he was 8 years older than me. It wasn't like we were going to be friends. He was just looking out for another, and I said to him, like, I just want you to know I appreciate that so much. And it was like having those people. Baruch Hashem, I was always blessed with having those type of people when I needed them. You know, when I was, 15, I was having an identity crisis, you know, as we all go through. And I had a very special friend at that stage of life who like would sit with me, and he'd go like, you know, let's work through it together. You know, let's talk about it. What's bothering you? What do you need to do? How do we need to work together on it? And you know, and he really got me. I was having like all things, should I be from, shouldn't I be from? It was a real point of life of like, is this where I want to go? Isn't it where I want to go? Throughout those years, it made me realize that we need people like that in our lives who are going to call us out. Yeah. We need to have those people who are going to say to you, your thinking is totally wrong.
And to have the personal humility to be able to say, ka-ching, thank you. That was I just got something valuable from somebody else that'll help me, as opposed to instinctively getting defensive, and that's kind of your natural position as in psychology. In your natural psychology, is if somebody comes and criticizes you, immediately you start wanting to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a super skill to be able to listen to somebody criticizing you and evaluate and say, okay, that's valid, that's not valid, whatever. But thank you for sharing that with me, because it shows at least that somebody cares enough to tell you.
Yeah, and that's a cognitive bias, is that we have to be real with ourselves to say, I don't have all the answers, I don't know everything, I'm on the same journey as everyone else, and I need guidance from people. They might not be smarter than me, they might not be, but they can see things.
Okay, that's a noise from outside.
Oh, okay, I was wondering.
Carry on.
Yeah. And it's just about removing your ego from it and saying, like, why are they telling me this? Yeah. And we have to work through those challenges ourselves. We have to put those flags down and say, if someone would come up to me in the street and give me that, I would never listen to them.
Yeah.
But they really are looking out for the best of me. And through the experience I've had, I've now learned that when someone does those things, it's because they're seeing something, and I need to listen to it.
Yeah.
They really care, and they're really saying a valid point, and I need to listen, and I need to listen to that. So that's just, for each person, I think their journey is different, but we do have to work on that cognitive bias of saying that I have to be willing to put those barriers down if I want to achieve something more with that.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And to switch to a completely different subject, let's talk about South Africa. I mean, you've been doing all your stuff in South Africa, and we're looking at a country that's struggling. On the one hand, it's like it's got it's had for the longest time a nightmare government, which is now slightly improved, but I don't know. It's just I'm speaking as an outsider now, even though I grew up in South Africa. It's I still have a certain amount of care for South Africa, because you can't ever really let go of where you came from, even though I consider myself I'm Israeli.
Yes.
I'm sort of in that respect, I'm done with South Africa. I live here. This is my home, and if Israel ever played South Africa in a sporting event, there's no question who I would be supporting.
Yes.
But everything in every respect. But nonetheless, there's still a certain amount of chen that South Africa has, and I touched on that earlier when I walk through the streets of South Africa and people are saying good morning, how are you, and people who will never ever see me again in my life are asking me, and even one time walking through the streets on Shabbos, and a group of 4 black guys stopping me and telling me how much they love Israel and the Jewish people, and they want to come to visit Israel, and it's they are such good people. On the other hand, it's a country that's struggling with a government that appears to have been bought by Iran, and is hugely hostile to Israel, if not to Jews in general. And the Jewish community that is such an exemplary Jewish community in terms of the amount of chesed that's done, in terms of the amount of Torah that happens in the community, and people like yourself volunteering with Hatzolah, and it's like one of the biggest heart, the community with such a big heart, but it's dwindling. What do you see as the future, and how things are going to play out?
So I don't know how things are going to play out.
It's difficult. But
I wish I was a Navi, but I will tell you my approach is probably a bit different to other people's. Over the years, I've always had the approach that whenever you look at the word hashkafa in the Torah, it's always negative, except for hashkifa mimunkacher. Yes, exactly. You can sing better than me, so I'll let you sing it. But what does that mean? It means that when you look at something, you always have to look through the eyes of the Torah and not through your own eyes. That's always the thing. I remember the Rosh Hashiva once spoke about, should we immigrate or not? He gave that whole talk.
I listened to that shir so many times before we actually emigrated.
Yes.
And then we, of course, went and spoke to him personally and heard that, as we always see, it's always a personal thing, and he was just trying to like bring the discussion back into the center,
Yes.
as opposed to this panic that everyone has said, we got to go.
Exactly. So he said something in that share that resonated with me still today. And when I spoke, and when people ask me the question, I always tell them the same thing. I used to give a men's share for 8 or 9 years to a group of guys, and at a certain point, the whole topic in the share came about immigration. And I said to them, it's very simple. I want to ask you a very simple question. Where are you planning on going to? And what's going to happen to your Yiddishkeit when you go there? Is it going up or is it going down? It's never going to stay the same, because you'll never have what you have.
Make the boat go faster.
Yes. And what was so interesting to me is the majority of the time, it wasn't even on their radar, that question. They were like, we're leaving because of this or because of that, and we'll work out the Yiddishkeit. And I said to them,
Danger,
if that's going to be your thing. And what was so interesting to me is that 95% of people who left all went down in their levels of Yiddishkeit, then up. Why? Because it wasn't on their radar, and they said, we'll deal with it. There were people who were keeping kashrus and Shabbos, and when they went there, they're like, we don't have a big enough kitchen for both, so we're keeping our pots and pans that are kosher in the boxes till we move to a bigger place, and we're having one set over here for meat and milk. And you're thinking like, so I always used to say to them, we're very blessed in South Africa that our Yiddishkeit and the way that we can observe our Yiddishkeit it's phenomenal. And I always said that if we look back, that for me the question is always, what's the Torah like, and what's yes, the government is in shambles. Yes, the government is anti-Israel, but that's the government. It's not the majority of the people. The majority of the people actually aren't supportive of the government and aren't supportive of their policies. It's a government because it's political, but it's not. They're not the spokespeople of they're not the spokesperson of the people.
At least not on this subject.
Yes.
Because the fact is, elections, are elections, and they still have a plurality, if not a majority.
100%. But people don't vote because of their foreign policies. People are voting because they want better. There's so many other issues. Free stuff. Well, firstly, there's so many other issues that they don't really care what's happening in the rest of the world, because they have bad sanitation, they have bad electricity, they have bad water. They just want basic living conditions taken care of. They don't really care what's happening in the rest of the world. And it's like, fix what we've got over here.
So they keep voting for the ANC because they've been delivering so well on those.
Yes. And because they're scared to vote another party in, because they're scared they'll take them back to apartheid days. And that's their whole thing. It's all scare tactics. It's all, and they keep on bringing those things up as well. I mean, if you look when apartheid ended, nothing's ever gone. They haven't really improved a lot of situations for people in all those years, and yet they still say if you vote for them, they're going to take you backwards. And you think, well, you haven't really taken them forwards either. So most people don't really care about the political landscape. That's not even on their radar. For me, the biggest question is always what's the Yiddishkeit like? Are we able to learn? Are we able to go? We have been very, very blessed, Bli and Hora, that we have a very, very low rate of anti-Semitism particularly in Johannesburg, but even in South Africa. If we look at the anti-Semitism, it's not violent. Yes, they make a bit of a noise, but it's not violent. We can still continue. They've never made any laws or anything that is anti-Jewish. So from a Yiddishkeit perspective, we actually are very, very blessed in the way that we live.
There was an attempted firebombing in Cape Town or whatever it was.
Yes. There was. That's what I'm saying. But if you look at Australia, what's happening at the moment, and you look at the UK,
different scale,
100%, and you look at anti-Semitism around the world. If you look in America and places like that, where there are very big Jewish communities, and you look at their rate of anti-Semitism, it's frightening. It's frightening. So, since October 7th, the stats of the rate of anti-Semitism has skyrocketed all around the world. Yes, in South Africa it also has, but minimal. It's not violent. It's not aggressive. Thank God. We're very, very blessed in those ways.
Yeah.
So I always look at it and say, what's the Yiddishkeit like? Does it affect the Yiddishkeit? And I think the moment it affects that is the moment, everything changes, and that's where real big decisions need to be made. And things really need to change. But I think at the moment, we're so lucky the way that we live. And we very are blessed that we can live such a Torah lifestyle like that. So for me, that's always the question that always comes to me. And I've had so many people who've immigrated, and I said, are you going to a place where you're going to grow in your level? or are you going to a place where your level's going to go down?
Yeah.
And even people who've come to Israel, as I said the same question to them. There they had kids who were in Jewish day schools. And I said to them, when you come to Israel, what community are you moving into? Are your kids still going to be exposed to that same thing that you exposed them to here? You know, because you've got to choose what's going to happen to them. I remember there was a guy in the Kollel community, Gerald Kaplan. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, sure.
Not the dentist. He owns properties. He does properties. So he said to me something so interesting. He said that when his parents were looking at schools for them, he said at that age his parents weren't from. And they were looking at either sending them to like a from Jewish day school or like a government school. And they sent them in those days to a from Jewish day school. And he said, why? So he said, because you've got to understand one thing. Your kids are either going to go a level above you or a level below you.
Right.
But they'll never be the same as you.
Yeah.
So you've got to choose, what do you want for them?
Yeah.
So he said, I don't want my kids being lower than what I have. I want them to be higher than what I have. So he said, that's why...
Like for a guy who's secular to say, even though like I've got a little bit of traditional whatever, I don't want my kids to like forget that they're Jewish. So what I've got no choice. I've got to give them something more Jewish.
Exactly. And that's
a lot of self-awareness to do that.
It's huge. It's huge. And I mean, if you look at the benefits it's reaped today, it's massive. But he said that was his father's insight of saying that my kids are never going to be the same as me. They're either going to go up or they're going to go down.
Yeah.
So I want to set them, at least give them the opportunity to go higher than to go lower. At least if they go higher and then they choose to go lower, okay, but at least I've given them the opportunity to do that. And I always look at it like this, saying like, you know, where are my kids now? What are they exposed to? What are their opportunities? And am I giving them the best ability to make their choice to go higher or to go lower? I want what's going to be best for them moving forward. So I think in South Africa, I think that we got to differentiate between the government and the people.
Right.
And I think from a Yiddishkeit perspective, it's about saying, what's the level of Yiddishkeit? Is it still viable? Isn't it? I think the day that it's not viable is a very, very different discussion. And that's the day of saying, okay, now we got to make real serious things. But that's what came back to the Rosh Hashiva's point over there of saying like, you've got to look at what you've got. And we're very blessed in many ways. You know, Sydney doesn't have one kosher butchery anymore.
Sheesh.
You know? And I spoke to, there was a family out from Australia and they were asking me, you know, how many kosher establishments do you have? I said, we have about 60. They were like, you have how many? I said, we have about 60 kosher establishments, butcheries. I said, we have 5 butcheries. We've got bakeries, restaurants, delis. They were like, you have more, you have less Jews.
Yeah.
You have less Jews and you have far many more kosher facilities than what we have for our community. And I was like, yeah. I said, like, what we have comparative to the size of our community, what we have is one of the highest percentage rates of kosher establishments when you look for the amount of Jews. And there's places that are opening up all the time. And you think, like, why would you want to open up a kosher place when everyone's leaving? But people are looking for the opportunities of growth, and people are still seeing those opportunities that they can still further. And I think that because people are still growing, and the Yiddishkeit, it's true that the Frum community might be a very small community, but it's very, very vibrant. And there's lots of growth. There's new shuls being built, and there's new communities.
Although you're talking to me about communities needing to amalgamate in order to make themselves viable.
So those are like your outlying communities. But if you look like in the hub of like your Glen Hazel areas, that they're building beautiful new shuls. There's like communities growing in those areas. So like it's always those that, you know, like,
I suppose if it's just like a sort of a shift, you know, out of the older communities into the newer, into the hub.
Yes.
And it really is kind of all sort of migrating into that little hub. Are there any new little pockets of where people are trying to blockbuster and make a new Jewish community somewhere else? No, because it's all consolidating in the Glen Hazel area.
Yeah, and they don't have numbers for that. Right. So yeah, it's very interesting. I once saw Rav Sender Grossness once showed me the whole concept of kibbutz galios. He says, like, you know, how does it work that people are going to be gathered? So he said, what's always so interesting is that if you look through Jewish history, if you look at the progression, what you've noticed, like it started with like the revolutions. You had your shtetls and then people moved into the cities. And he said the same thing. He says, well, what you noticed like across the whole of South Africa is over years, you had all these outlying communities and then everyone's moved into bigger. And he says, like, you see in the world that your Jewish communities are all starting to amalgamate into like centers.
Yes.
You know, and he says that that's one of the signs. When you see all these different places coming into one place, that's like part of what it means. He says, like you see it in Mitzrayim, that's what happened in Mitzrayim before we left. They all came from all different places and they gathered in one place and then we all left together. And he says that it's the same thing about over here. If you look at all the communities, they're all starting to gather together into like certain...
Gullah's starting to undo itself.
Yes.
It's... okay, yeah. So if you look at that, if you imagine if you looked at it as a heat map of Jews of Jews around the world, and like post Roman exile and everything, everyone's just like scattered and all over the place, all over the globe, and you just see like this even heat map everywhere of Jews, like literally every last pocket of the world, and then they start sort of gathering together and gathering, like sort of, you know how little droplets of mercury will sort of
they all like start attracting,
ding, 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 and they sort of form into these little pockets, and ultimately everyone is going to end up back in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah. So that's what I think you're starting to see. Look, there is a lot of aliyah out of South Africa, and it's interesting. There's not a lot of people going to other places anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
is
before
that because they're not taking them anymore, or
I don't think there's a desire for. It's so interesting. Like first it was Australia.
Yeah, Australia was for decades. Australia was the destination of choice.
But it's so interesting how like that's not their destination anymore. It's like if people are leaving, the majority of people who leave come to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Like that's where it's got to. Like if I'm leaving here, I'm only going to somewhere where where I know that I can be better. And I think that's. I always tell people that my advice to be like when they say, should we go, should we stay? Or say like, what's going to happen with if your Yiddishkeit's going to grow and you're going to be better, fantastic. Yeah. Then it's a good move. But if you're not thinking about your Yiddishkeit, so what's going to happen with your kids? Yeah. What's going to happen to the future generations? Are they going to assimilate? Are they going to give up on these things, everything you've worked for? So what's going to happen to them?
Yeah. To be honest, when we were making our Aliyah decision, it was a lot of it was. I mean, there was a lot of push, but we had a whole metamorphosis of how our approach to leaving South Africa went, because at one point we were also looking at Australia, at the UK, and our approach sort of changed into from a negative, we got to get out of South Africa, to we got to be in a place that's good for us. And we realized that after me having spent a little more than a year in yeshiva or whatever, and I was already out and working, and I was in a community where when the rabbi wasn't available, people were coming and asking me shilas in kashrus, and I was like, what? Like I'm not the rabbi. I don't know this. I can tell you if your teaspoon is most likely is not treif. It's fine. But it was actually, it started to set off some alarm bells in my head that like, hold on a second, we're in a community where people are looking up to us as sort of spiritual leaders and whatever, and we were like, I was an Amaritz, a complete Amaritz, and we kind of made the decision that we actually need to put ourselves in a place where we can be a tail to lions rather than a head to foxes. And this is one of the other things that actually Rabbi Kranus, that's how pushed us. He was one of the few rabbis who actually actively pushed us and said, you need to be in a good community in Eretz Yisrael because you're stifled here. So we needed. So that's why we plunked ourselves down here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and we found that kind of community that was, as he put it, that's like where you want to be in 5 years' time. Yeah, and that was a great move for us. It put us in a very different track.
He was a rabbi. It was the most amazing thing. He was a rabbi who I think was like on a self-destructing path of his own community. And the reason I say this is because when he saw that people had an opportunity to grow, he would tell them to leave his community.
Go to Glen Hazel. Go to Israel.
He would say like, you've outgrown me. It's time for you to move on. And I learned from him. It was very interesting. I learned that lesson from him. I discussed it with him, and he said, people will outgrow you, and that's good. That's a healthy sign. And I started using that with people I started learning with, and I said to them, you must know one day, like I know you're enjoying the learning, but one day you're going to phone me and you're going to say to me, you know what, we've actually outgrown you and we need something more. And I say to them, I look forward to that day, and I don't take it personally. One day we will stop learning together. And I look forward to that day because my purpose is to get you from here to here. And then you're going to find someone else. And I'm okay with that. And I look forward to that because that means that you've grown. I'm not upset. And when it does reach that point, I always say to them, we've reached that point. Like, we'll always be friends. And like, even people I used to learn with, I still go out with them and we still connect and we still phone and we still have, but I said, you've outgrown me as your teacher. You need to move on to that next level.
That's a level of maturity that you don't, and stuff to like, what you were saying earlier about like not setting up somebody else as a cult figure, as I'm the one and I'm going to show you the derech. You've got to make yourself transparent, Kilo, as Rabbi often says about the Melech, is he has no personal stake in the whole thing. He is just there to serve the people, and that's a level of malchus, to be able to help people and just have no ego in it at all, just make people great.
And I saw that from Rabbi Kranus, and it was a huge lesson for me, and I started using that. I said, like, and it's because people feel bad, like, you know, you're learning with you, and I've been learning for 4 years, and like, but I said to them, I said, like, we've reached the point where this learning is no longer of benefit, and you need to still learn, but I'm not going to be that guy. You're like, I know my strengths, I know what I'm good at, and you need to move on. And once they did, it was so much better for them. And I said that as a premise right from the beginnings, that they should never feel bad, because I learned that from him, and he said, like, why am I going to keep people just to grow my own community? Like, I didn't take this on for my ego to have the biggest community. I took this on to help people grow. And if that means that they leave my community, then I'm happy because they've grown to that point where they don't need me anymore. And I thought, like, I've never heard a rabbi say that about his community. It's like, you leave, everyone leave. I'm happy. I'll close the doors if you're all, you know, if there's no need for me.
This is not the destination. This is the journey.
Yes.
Right. I'm part of your journey, and you know, you can view me as a university if you like, and come through and graduate and move on to something bigger.
And he was happy when people left his community, and like I'd never met a rabbi like that, and I was like, wow, that's a real rabbi.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's like, wow, that's a person we can look up to. And I thought, like, wow. And when he taught me that lesson, I was like, yo, every rabbi needs to learn that lesson. Because it is, we all have our different strengths, we all have our different things. But to be so open and so honest about it, I was like, yo, that's real.
Yeah. And we should always have that ability to have that humility, and to be able to grow ourselves and to help others in that sort of selfless way. That I think you, in the way that you've described how your work is, with the work that you're doing with people to understand gratitude and values-based businesses. It's a great thing that you're doing, and I just wish you every strength, every Hatzolah. Hashem should bless you and give you every success in your derech.
And to you as well. And this podcast should just grow and grow and grow. The people you've had, the people you've influenced, the amazing work that you're doing, Hashem should just give you only bracha and hatzlacha and your whole family in everything that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much.
Sababa, where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin. Hakol Sababa, where life takes a spin. Join the fun, let the talk begin.